But all right, I held off long enough. Let's get to our interview with Coach Carl Reed of 247 Sports. We hit on a number of SEC teams, what's going on up there at Missouri, Tennessee, recruitment of the 5-star quarterback Nico. Not even going to try to say his last name at this point in time. We talk about some Georgia. So we go all around the league quite a bit here with Coach Reed, as well as talk some recruiting, something that he is way, way, way more knowledgeable than I am. All right, we're joined for the first time by my man, Coach Carl Reed. He's a college football analyst for 247 Sports. We all know it, the go-to site for college football recruiting and analysis. And he goes by Coach Reed Live on Twitter. And he is also former head coach of Lutheran North, and he won a state title in 2019. So, Coach, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be here.
I'm just very curious about your journey, and how does someone go from winning a state title, now you're working the other side, so to speak, you're doing the media thing. How's your transition going? Are you liking this, working on this side of it?
Well, it's going pretty good. When you had a kind of high school program we had there, you start to build a lot of relationships with the media, a lot of relationships with the recruiting sites. And I had a few guys that played in the All-American Bowl. And so I started to develop some really interesting relationships with inside 24/7. And you never know what direction life is going to take you in, but it led me to this, and it's been a good transition for me.
Yeah, and one thing I really love about your Twitter feed, again, everybody go follow it at Coach Reed Live, but you keep it real, but you keep it positive. And I think that's something we really need in this day and age, particularly when we're dealing with so much negativity when it comes to this college football and recruiting and everything like that. So, I really wanted to ask you about that. Are you on a mission to keep it positive, but at the same time give real advice on there?
Well, you want to tell people the truth, and so most people don't understand how recruiting works, and most people don't understand it from either side. They don't understand it from the college coach's perspective, from the high school coach's perspective, and then what the players are going through. So I always wanted to make sure that my players and their parents had the best information and the truthful information possible. And it may not always be what you want to hear, but it's definitely what you need to hear, because it's going to affect all the decisions that you make moving forward. It's important to understand what an offer is and what it means. Is it committable? Is it uncommittable? And what does it need to go from uncommittable to committable? It's a lot of things you have to search through. Now with the transfer portal and now with NILs, it brings another level to the game, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have an understanding of what it is you're doing and how those processes work, you can be in real trouble.
And it's interesting, of course, social media has changed the game too. And you mentioned it, you had some All-Americans on your roster that you coach. How much pressure for these young men do they get with college coaches and college fans and high school fans and everything like that? And I cannot imagine all that gets thrown at them in a short period of time.
Well, it's pressure, but it's from different levels, right? So if you're an All-American high school recruit, if you're one of the top 100 players in the country, there's no pressure from a standpoint of opportunities because you have them abundantly, mm-hmm. right? You can go to any school you want to. You more or less have to sit down and make the best decision for you. Probably the intensity of the fan bases mm-hmm. and the amount of people that contact you. And so a lot of the time you have to sit your phone down. You have to get your schoolwork done. You have to remember to still be a kid. It's other things. It's probably more stress on the borderline guys who are in a position where they might not have a place to go. They're kind of starting to find out that they're not the recruit or the player that they thought they were. And so those guys probably have more mental pressure. It's probably more of a mental stress for you. But if you're a recruit and Kirby Smart calls you every Monday and Nick Saban calls you every Tuesday and Lincoln Riley calls you every Wednesday, that's not pressure. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's not stress. Like, you're going into arguably one of the best times of your life, and you just have to make a solid decision for yourself.
Now, are there any particular schools or particular coaches that you enjoyed interacting with the most? And I'm thinking specifically in the SEC.
Well, no, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I understand that recruiting is just a business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you have if you're a high school coach and you have one of the best players in the country, then you can get any coach in the SEC on the phone almost whenever you feel like talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you don't have one of the best players in the country, it's going to be much harder for you to reach those coaches. So I think that you have to understand that these aren't personal relationships; they're business relationships, and you should always treat them as such. And so when you're dealing in recruiting and you're dealing in any level of college football business, it's important to understand that these guys aren't your friends. This is a cold-blooded business. It's one of the toughest in the world, and you have to be strong enough to be able to navigate in this business.
Now I know you're a proud St. Louis man, so I wanted to ask you about old Drinkowitz there at Missouri. What do you think of the job he's been doing? And it certainly seems like he has made the state of Missouri a priority, and he's recruiting the heck out of it. And he did a hell of a job that last cycle. What do you think about Coach Drinkowitz?
Eli Drinkwitz is a ball of energy, and he has brought some exciting momentum to the state of Missouri, especially the way that he has recruited St. Louis, getting a commitment and a signature from a guy like Luther Burden.
Mm-hmm.
He actually has a few of the top prospects in the state on campus today. And so he's a guy that when he comes through St. Louis, he's a lot more active and a lot more recognizable than some of the guys who have been there in the past. And so I think that he's doing a tremendous job there with the way that he's recruited. And I think that you're going to see a really good fall from the Missouri Tigers this year.
You mentioned Luther Burden. I don't need you to make anything too bold of predictions, but I've just heard so much hype around that guy. Do you think he makes a instant impact for the Tigers this year?
Well, he's definitely will. I mean, he's going to start, from the moment he walks on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And he's as good as any player in the country. A lot of it is going to come down to quarterback play. If they get consistent quarterback play, you're going to potentially see one of the most dangerous players in the country as a freshman.
Now, another prospect, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I apologize, but the 5-star out of California, Nico, there's speculation that Tennessee rising up the charts. I know you covered that specifically. What can you tell us, the audience, about Nico and his massive potential potentially in Josh Heupel's offense?
Well, number one, he can make all the throws, right? And so when you're talking about a kid like him who can play quarterback for anybody in the country and who has the leadership ability and a word that not many people use anymore, I might show my age a little bit, he's got a lot of moxie,
Mm-hmm.
right? he's got a little bit of swagger to him. And you have to have that kind of confidence to come in the SEC and win the games you're going to win. If you're thinking about playing at the University of Tennessee, you're going to have to go into Georgia and win if you want to win the SEC East. You're going to have to go into Florida and win. You're going to have to play you're going to have to play the cross-conference games with the SEC West schools. And so you need a big-time quarterback in some of those situations to take you over the top. But win, lose, or draw, nobody has consistently maybe the fan base that the University of Tennessee has. 100,000 fans screaming Rocky Top no matter what the program is doing. So I think it's a unique situation. Josh Heupel has proven year after year during his times as offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, at Missouri, the places he's been, Central Florida, now Tennessee, he's an elite offensive coach. And if he can close the deal on Nico, it's going to put some pressure on some of the SEC defense.
Hey, do you think Nico, just what you know about him, is he the type of guy where you can really build an entire class around him because other players are going to want to play with a guy that has that swagger, has that moxie?
Well, definitely. I talk to recruits all the time, and I don't care what position you play. I don't care if you're a linebacker, D lineman, whatever you are. If you want to win games and compete for championships, you need to pay attention to where the best quarterbacks are going, because at the end of the day, the guys with elite quarterback play, with a few exceptions. Georgia showed this year that you can do without it if you have that type of generational defense. But more times than not, if you have an elite quarterback, you're going to give yourself a chance to win football games.
It's interesting you talk about Georgia because I wanted to ask you about that and Kirby Smart. And, so you led a team to a title, so you're a great person to ask this question. They just, broke the barrier there in Georgia. They've been searching for a championship for 4 decades. Now they have it. Is that a more difficult thing, or is it harder to stay at the top now that everybody on that roster has accomplished their mission? Do you think Georgia can stay up there, or is it more difficult to stay at the top?
Well, it's difficult to do both, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to win a championship. Winning a championship is not easy, and every year when you have a team, and I've had great teams, and when you got a few guys that are special players, everybody expects you to win every time you go out there. But to win championships, you have to be able to beat other great teams. And Kirby Smart put himself in position and his program in position where they were generational this year. And so it's tough, number one, to win one. It's most guys think about all the great coaches most guys never win one, right? Now he has an opportunity to put himself into another stratosphere with guys like Coach Saban and guys like Urban Meyer and Dabo Swinney, guys who have won multiple championships. It's a handful of guys who have won. But it's hard as hell now to get even on that list with guys who won just one. Now what you're talking about is your legacy and can you continue to keep it going. But I think that Kirby Smart understands that probably better than anybody because he was part of an Alabama machine that consistently won championships. Mm-hmm. And so he has a similar mindset. He's made great new additions on his coaching staff. He's made great movement even when he's lost. Think about who he's lost. He's lost Mel Tucker. He's lost Dan Lanning, and he's replaced those guys with good guys. You get opportunity. Will Muschamp is back in a pivotal role. And so if anybody knows what he's doing, it's Kirby Smart.
Now, what do you think about the way Lane Kiffin is going about building his program? Because, with the transfer portal, we're in a new era. So, there's no wrong answer here. But it certainly, to me, looks like Lane Kiffin is looking at the landscape and saying, I can't beat Alabama and A&M and some of these other schools for high school recruits, but I can go through the transfer portal, land some elite talent. Do you think that's a sustainable way to keep winning? Because they won 10 games last year. I don't know if they can do that again in Oxford. What do you think?
Well, I think that Lane Kiffin is taking advantage of the way the situation is now. The transfer portal, look how Michigan State used it to jump into the elite mix in college football. If Lane Kiffin can continue to recruit those players and get those high caliber transfers to his program, why couldn't he compete with everybody in the nation? It's not far-fetched to think that he can consistently put out 9 to 10 win seasons if he continues to recruit at a high level, because you have to take the transfer portal into consideration now. Whether you're recruiting transfer kids or whether you're recruiting high school kids, it's all about getting the top level high players, and Lane Kiffin did that this year with his transfer portal class.
Now, one of my favorite questions to ask everybody this offseason, who do you think is going to prove to be a better hire, Billy Napier at Florida or Brian Kelly at LSU? Two really good coaches at two fantastic programs.
Well, two fantastic programs with elite recruiting bases. You got to say Brian Kelly early because Brian Kelly has proven he can do it at a high level for a long period of time. It's really hard to win at Notre Dame. The academic restrictions are harder. Not playing in the conference is harder. He has put together an exceptional football staff. Now, I know when you think about some of the hires that he's made, he's turned it around already recruiting. I think Billy Napier will do a fine job at Florida, but if I had to give it the edge right now, I would go Brian Kelly at LSU.
All right, last thing for you, Carl. I really appreciate all your time. Is there maybe a recruit or two in the 2023 class that you don't think is getting enough buzz and is going to turn out to be a really, really good college football player?
Well, I think one of the top players in the country right now that everybody needs to take a look at, and I would say that he's probably getting a lot of buzz, but the SEC schools are fighting on him, is Sam Pemba out of IMG. Sam Pemba's a St. Louis native, but he transferred down to IMG a year ago. He's highly coveted throughout the SEC, and I think that he's a really, really elite guy, and that he's going to make an instant impact across the board. Really, no matter who chooses him and where he goes, and it's going to be one of those elite SEC type recruitments. And another guy, and I'm gonna drop down a class probably. No, I'm gonna stick with 23. Jeremiah Love is a running back at Christian Brothers High School in St. Louis. He's got elite speed. He's the state champion in the 100-meter dash. He's a state champion in football this year, this past season, and he's starting to heat up a little bit. He doesn't have everybody quite yet, but it's starting to take out from him, and I think that he's going to be a major factor this year on the recruiting cycle.
All right, Coach, I really appreciate you. Again, everybody give him a follow at Coach Reed Live and check out all the outstanding work he's doing at 247 Sports. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, so just want to say thanks again, Coach Reed, for joining the show. Got to give him a follow. Don't forget at Coach Reed Live, and you can find that in the podcast notes. If you're not following him already, cannot recommend him enough. He really does have some outstanding insight and a unique perspective into the game of college football and college football recruiting that everyone that listens to this show should be following if they're not already. But hey, that's going to do it for the show. And like I said, we got one more guest lined up for the next episode. We got Shane Beamer comments. We got Billy Napier comments. And we should have one or two more, I think. I mean, it's going to be a loaded show on Thursday. And don't forget to join the ESPN Bracket Challenge that I mentioned. Again, just go to the ESPN Bracket Challenge, search That SEC Podcast, free to play, and we're giving out prizes. Or you can also find a link to the Bracket Challenge in the podcast show notes. But that is going to do it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.